First, to our continuing focus here on WION, a group of armed men have abducted 7 Indian engineers in Afghanistan. Local Afghan officials claim the Indians were kidnapped from the northern Baghlan province. They were working with a power company, KEC. They were reportedly kidnapped along with an Afghan colleague from Polekhomri in the northern Baghlan province. India's Ministry of External Affairs has confirmed the kidnapping of the 7 Indian engineers. The ministry has said they are in contact with the Afghan authorities and officials, and further details are being ascertained. Harsh Goenka, who is the chairman of the RPG Enterprises, which owns KEC, has issued a statement. He said, and I'm quoting, request External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and the Ministry of External Affairs to help rescue 7 of our managers from the kidnapping in Afghanistan. And earlier, we spoke to Ashraf Haidari, who is DG Policy and Strategy with the Afghanistan Foreign Ministry. Take a listen into what he said.
Haidari Saab, salam. Thanks so much for joining us on WION. Now, these 7 Indians, and we believe 1 Afghan national as well, have been kidnapped. They are not combatants in the least manner. These were people who were trying to provide electricity to the Afghan people.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on your show. It is very unfortunate that this news is unfolding. I was also in a series of meetings, and as I came out, I learned about it, and then I got your call to make a comment. As we speak, it is still being looked into, investigated, and from what I know from our news sources, that some comments have been made by local authorities on the situation, confirming this abducting of 6 Indian engineers and as well as their Afghan driver. So I'm sure that all efforts are being made to release them as soon as possible, as we have made such efforts in Indian and other cases in the past. It is very unfortunate that instability and insecurity which is imposed on Afghanistan provides an enabling environment for such crimes to happen.
And earlier, we also had a word with the former ambassador of India to Afghanistan, Vivek Karju. Take a listen in to what the ambassador said.
I think this is a very serious development, and the government, I'm sure, is trying its best to find further details of what has actually transpired. It's not easy to ascertain these details quickly. I myself, 15 years ago, had to handle, when I was ambassador in Afghanistan, had to handle an abduction of 2 engineers, and we were fortunate to get them back after 15 days in captivity. So I know that this is a sensitive time. Abductions can take place for a variety of reasons, stretching from political to plain extortion. And let us hope that this is only for extortion, because there are all kinds of terrorist groups. There's the Afghan Taliban and the Daesh, and the Afghan Taliban, we know their connections. But I think the government, and I'm sure all of us, the people, as well as the media's primary objective would be for the safe return of our fellow citizens.
Well, that is the latest that we have at this point. The 7 Indian engineers who were kidnapped in Afghanistan, the northern Baghlan province, to be specific. These are also exclusive images that we have accessed of the area from where these 7 Indian engineers who are working with a power company called KEC have been kidnapped. The company falls under the RPG Enterprises group. The chairman of that firm, Harsh Goenka, has also sent out an appeal to the Indian Foreign Ministry appealing for urgent intervention. The Indian Foreign Ministry and the Minister of External Affairs, Sushma Swaraj, are working in close coordination with the Afghanistan officials. Remember, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs earlier in the day also issued a statement saying that it is ascertaining further details and is working in close cooperation with the Afghanistan counterparts to get in further details. My colleague Amitabh Revi is now joining us on the broadcast to talk a little bit more about the earlier instances where Indians in Afghanistan have been abducted. Amitabh?
Indians and Indian assets have been in the crosshairs in Afghanistan in the past as well, and they have been targeting both Indians and Indian assets. We said there have been some happy endings, though. The first was of Judith D'Souza, who worked for an NGO, the Aga Khan Foundation in Kabul, and she was kidnapped from the middle of Kabul in the middle of the day. She was in fact released 44 days after she was kidnapped on the 10th of June 2016, and these are pictures of Judith D'Souza after she returned back home and was met by the Foreign Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. There were no details given by anyone, including Judith, on who had kidnapped her, for what reason, and how she was released. But earlier in 2015 as well, before Judith was released, there was a attack on a Kabul guest house in which 4 Indians were killed. Those Indians were working in development projects, in Afghan ministries as well, and they were killed in a guest house that is often frequented by Indian visitors to Kabul. A gunman had gained entry into that guest house with a weapon, and he went from room to room killing those 4. Another happy ending was a Catholic priest who was kidnapped in the west of Afghanistan, in Herat, which borders Iran. He was kidnapped and released only 1 year later. June 2014 was when he was kidnapped, and it was only in 2015 that he was released. And again, these are pictures you're seeing of the top Indian leadership after he was released and came back to India safely. The guest house, there was another guest house attacked in 2010 where Indians were also targeted. Those included unarmed army major doctors who were killed. There were 6 Indians killed, including 2 army doctors. At least 5 other army doctors, they're all unarmed, were injured in that attack. Apart from the collateral damage, as it's called, lots of Afghans killed in many of these attacks. But then, as you go back in time, there were more spectacular attacks on Indian targets, including a 2009 attack on the Indian embassy in Kabul, where at least 17 people were killed, most of them Afghans, because the suicide bomber could not get entry into the Indian embassy in Kabul. The Haqqani network in Pakistan was blamed by both the US intelligence as well as Afghan intelligence and Indian sources. But the most spectacular attack in terms of a high-profile attack took place in 2008 on the Indian embassy in Kabul, where a suicide bomber almost managed to get his Toyota Camry inside the gates. It was in fact 2 ITBP personnel who stopped the suicide bomber getting in. Both of them died. ITBP Jawans, Rup Singh Pathania was one of them, and the defense attaché, Brigadier Mehta, and the senior political councillor VVR Rao, Venkateshwar Rao, was among those killed. There were over 100 other Afghans who were lined up in a nearby gully to get visas for various countries who had also been killed. So India has been the target in Afghanistan, and the Haqqani network or other networks that are based in Pakistan have often been blamed. 2003 was when 2 abducted manager engineers had also been released. So the hope is that these 7 Indian engineer managers will also be released unharmed.